The movie starts with Victoria going back to visit her mother in the village. As she reaches home, she is greeted with despise from her mother because she did not give her grandkids, as she was not yet married. Victoria argued that she would not marry herself, but her mother could not hear that at all. The movie later turns to her in the city where she had a salon business and was going well for herself. Later, she goes to a church to pray for a husband, and as she goes out, she met a man named Zed. Zed was a chemist with little to no income and a business built only to pass time. Victoria seemed to like Zed after Zed asks her out, and even though she did not know him very well and she knew that he was out of her league, she liked him too. The next day, she met another man named Charles, who revealed to like her too and was doing good in life and had a very good house and car. She later asked her friend about the two guys that she had met the 2 past days, who advised her to go for Charles because Charles was doing fine in life, but Victoria revealed that she liked Zed even though Zed had nothing to offer, which angered her friend who left the house. Her mother, on the other hand, seemed to be pleased that she would have grandchildren. She did not care about the status whatsoever. After a while, Zed and Victoria got married and he moved into her house. Victoria later funded Zed's chemist and turned it into a pharmacy which started booming with time and started to do very well. The scene then turns after a few months later. Victoria got pregnant and they had a baby girl who made them both happy as a couple. It later turned out that a scene where Zed and Victoria were having car trouble and went to visit a mechanic for repair, and Zed met an old friend named Don there. Don was a rich man who promised Zed a business opportunity and asked him to meet her later and gave him the details. Victoria didn't seem to like the idea, but wanted the best for Zed, so she allowed it to go on. Zed met Don and his rich friends and admired how they lived their lives. He later met the boss of the rich club and his name was Billion. Billion told Zed to wash his hands in the fountain and told him to bring his child the next day. Zed was a little suspicious at first, but later complied. Zed tried to argue more and more, but Billion told him to bring the baby because the baby was sick and at the point of death, so it was of no use to not bring the baby. Therefore, Zed had to bring the baby. Zed went home and as he reached there, found the baby sick and realized he had messed up. He later told Victoria that they would take the baby to a fancy hospital, but ended up taking the child to Billion's house. Billion took the child to a sanctuary with Zed where Victoria had been left in the sitting lounge, and there they pounded the baby to death. Victoria, who was in the living room, sensed something wrong as she was a mother, so she went and tried to cause trouble to have her baby back. The club ordered that Victoria be killed, and she was killed. Zed and his new billionaire friends cooked up a story to tell Victoria's mother about her daughter's death and about the accident and fire which took place for Victoria. Part 2 starts with Zed celebrating his new wedding with the billionaire friends. Suddenly, Billion sensed a presence around that he went to confront. This presence was Victoria's, who had died and was ready to haunt Zed while carrying her dead daughter. Billion used his magic to fight Victoria's ghost, and after a while, he was able to contain her and lock her up in a bottle as not to disturb anyone at the wedding party. The wedding celebration went on without a hassle, and after the wedding, Victoria persisted and freed herself and gave Billion a warning to stay out of it and stay out of her way, and she was giving him a last chance. Billion complied as he knew he was fighting a losing battle. Meanwhile, Zed and his new wife moved into a mansion where she invited her sister to stay with them to help with the housework. Victoria's mom, on the other hand, cried and blamed herself for the death of her daughter and thought that she should have been alive if she did not pressure her into marriage. Later, the Brotherhood billionaires come to visit Zed and he was not around, but the wife's sister finds them odd and tells the sister about it, who gets angry at her and tells her to ignore such and never talk about these things. Later, as the girl was sleeping, Victoria shows up and does not say a word. This terrified the little girl and she called out to her sister and told her about everything that happened, who also still brushed off and told her not to talk about such. Victoria later appears outside and then cries out with her dead daughter, and Zed decides to hear them and do nothing. Later on, Victoria appears to Zed's wife's sister again and tells her that the house was her blood and she was killed for it, and she was standing in it. The girl tells her sister about it and asks to leave the house because she could not take it. Her sister condemns her and tells her to leave. The girl goes to her village and tells her parents about it, which angers the father to say that the sister should not come back at any moment because she has disgraced the family. Later, Zed confronted Victoria and his new wife comes out and finds him talking to himself as she could not see Victoria like Zed. Zed got angry and storms out and couldn't explain anything to his wife. Later, the wife's mother came to advise her and to tell her that the father had told her never to come back home. But once she heard the mother's advice, she brushed it off, but Zed heard them and got angry at the mother-in-law. Later on, Zed went to meet his billionaire friends who advised him on a way to avoid his dead wife Victoria because they had gone through the same and they shared the same problem. They advised him to sacrifice a body part and to allow it to rot, which was kind of very bad. And Zed chose his arm. The next morning, Zed woke up with a rotten arm. He snapped at his wife and tried to choke her in her sleep unconsciously. Zed's arm escalated after he went to the hospital and he got to start rotting everywhere. He was taken back to his parents' home in the village and the Billionaires' Club decided to visit him there, where he stopped them and did not want to see them at any moment. He later remembered his wife Victoria and the good times that they had with the child and the happiness that they had together, and regretted the choices that he had made in his life. As he sat helpless at night at his parents' village, Victoria appeared, and Zed confessed to Victoria and apologized for killing her. His parents heard the confession, and Zed gave up the ghost and died. The last part starts with the Billionaires' Club gathering to bring in new recruits since Zed had died. They agreed that one of them would bring in his nephew and friends too, who agreed. They brought them into the sanctuary and turned them into vultures so they could feed on human flesh. As they finished feeding, Billion tries to turn them back into humans but fails to use his magic for the first time and wonders why. They then decide to call their chief, who was flown from India, to work it out, but he also failed to turn them back, so they decided to kill them and dump them in the forest. Afterwards, they realized that it was Zed blocking their magic as he came forth for them and slapped one of his former friends, Don, who gets mad and starts stripping naked. The chief and his group decide to go to Zed's graveyard to deal with his body through a ritual, but Zed appears and attacks them and they flee the scene. This leaves the chief sick for a while and the Brotherhood in shambles. The chief could not make it due to the fact that he had been handled by Zed. Well and good. Zed goes for the remaining billionaires and whips them to death. With a few that remained, he went to the police station and asked the IG to arrest the remaining billionaire Billion, but they were afraid to do so. So he decided to go by himself by possessing the IG and meets Billion. As he arrived to meet Billion, Billion resists and mocks him and uses his magic to confuse Zed and the IG. After a while, Zed really uses his magic back and kills Billion. And once Billion is killed, Zed decides to rest because all the billionaires were taken care of and dead. The only one remaining was his friend Don, who got mad. So the scene ends with Zed looking at his friend Don, who was at the bin or at a place of the latrine. And this is the end of the story. Thank you very much for watching. I encourage you to subscribe, like and share so we could have more of such videos for you. Thank you and wonderful day.